Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast.
Go Blue, and welcome to our Michigan Game Day show for USC Week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. With us in just a few minutes to discuss this important game on Saturday, we'll be beat writer Austin Meek from The Athletic. We'll also hear some thoughts from Lincoln Riley that came from his radio show earlier this week. No one knows how things will go on Saturday. Alex Orji is getting his first start, but how his offensive line performs will in a great way determine how he fares. The offense as a whole, in every phase of the game, simply needs to be better. On defense, these are the games Wink Martindale came here to coach. His defense has had their fair share of early season woes, too. This Saturday, they have to notch it up against a very talented offense with NFL talent at the wideouts. It's another game for Sharon Moore and his staff to prepare for, and it will test their mettle early in the season. Earlier this week, Lincoln Riley was asked what advice he will give his team about playing Michigan on the road.
It's different, right, when there's not anybody cheering when you make a play, and so, or just a very few. There'll be certainly, I know we'll squeeze as many in there as we can, but so yeah, that part's different. I think you got to have a lot of poise. You got to have an incredible amount of trust. Your communication, I think, always when you get in these environments, your communication, your operation have got to be really, really good because they're going to challenge you on top of the crowd. I mean, just a really good football team with a lot of really good players.
Riley said this Saturday is a big game for his team.
It's a big game. I mean, it is. It's for a lot of reasons. I mean, in any year it would be a big game, but you go, first Big Ten matchup, you taking arguably the two most iconic brands, in the conference and two of the most iconic brands in the sport, and you pair them up together, and I think probably fitting that we're doing it at their place, being that they've obviously been in the Big Ten forever, and so it's cool, man. I mean, it is. It's cool. It's a great opportunity, and so I don't think there's any harm in acknowledging that. Now, what it takes to go play well in that is going to be the same recipe that it takes to go play well in any game like this, and so we've got to be able to lock in and go execute it. But yeah, I mean, you got to appreciate it. What a great opportunity for us, kind of being the newbie here in the league and to get a chance to go up there and play the defending national champion.
Coach Riley took a few minutes to share his thoughts on Michigan.
Well, they're like most teams that have had a run of great years and then had obviously a tremendous year last year. What you're judged on is so high. I mean, this is still, make no mistake about it, this is still a very, very, very good football team. And anybody that thinks they're not is crazy, all right? This is, without a doubt, one of the best defenses in the country. They have NFL personnel on both sides of the ball all over the place, a really good coaching staff, crazy experience. I mean, this is a great team that'll be a big challenge. Obviously, we know they're looking at a quarterback change here, defensively. And so, certainly got to be ready for all things there. But, we know the player and athlete that Orji is. I remember him coming out of high school. And so we have a lot of respect for him and the weapons that they have around him, their ability to run the ball. They ran it very well last week. elite tight end, elite backs. I mean, they have tremendous players offensively, and then defensively. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Really good group, tremendous defensive line. They're really good at all levels. Got one of the best corners in the game. I mean, just it's what you would expect when you go play the defending national champions. They got a really good team, and it'll be a big-time challenge.
Riley said he loves road games and really looks forward to the environment and the opportunity on Saturday.
I love the road, man. I always do. They're the best.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've always said that no matter where I coach, and I've been lucky to coach at some great places that have some, great home venues and home field advantages, and this is certainly stacks right up there, obviously. Being able to coach here at USC and being able to coach, at the Coliseum is as good as it gets in terms of home games. But there's just something about going on the road, man. They're the most special games. I think the ones you deep down look forward to the most. And so I've always appreciated getting a chance to coach in some of these other elite venues and against great opponents. And so this will be another one to put on the list, and one I'm very much looking forward to.
My guest today says that, like many of us, he has no idea what to expect on Saturday. Up next is beat writer Austin Meek from The Athletic. So stay with us. Joining us this week as we get ready for another big game at the Big House on Saturday is beat writer Austin Meek from The Athletic. Great to have you with us, Austin.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start with the news this week from Sharon that Alex Orji is getting the start on Saturday. Not much of a surprise, really, is it, Austin?
It's certainly not a surprise to see Alex in the starting role. We didn't know if we would find out before the game who was going to be the starter. Thought there was a chance that they could take that decision all the way up to the first snap and keep everybody guessing. But I think Sharon Moore probably realized that after the way the game played out against Arkansas State, there really wasn't any mystery here in terms of what they needed to do. It's time to get Alex Orji out there and give him an opportunity and see what he can do. Davis Warren won the job in the last week of camp, earned the chance to start to begin the season, but just didn't take care of the ball the way he needed to keep the job. And so we're going to find out on Saturday what Alex Orji can do.
Yeah, and I've read and heard several media folks question the wisdom of naming Orji before the game. I heard that question even asked to Lincoln Riley on his radio show the other night. Do you think they should have made that announcement, Coach? And he said, it doesn't matter to us. We were ready for both of them anyway. So I don't really think it's a big deal, do you?
No, I mean, I think the reality is that USC can see what all the rest of us can see. I'm sure that Lincoln Riley and Danton Lynn and the rest of their staff was fully aware of what the situation is here. Watched that game against Arkansas State, saw Alex Orji come in the second half, and they were going to be fully prepared for him to play. And I think, also, nobody really knows exactly what Michigan's offense is going to look like with Alex Orji at quarterback because we really haven't seen him play for an extended period of time. So, you can say, well, USC gets a heads up here to prepare for a running quarterback, but they were going to prepare for that regardless. And the specific things that Michigan is going to do with Alex Orji, I think that's still an open question. I would assume that Michigan has some wrinkles in the playbook with him that they have not shown yet. And so USC is going to be guessing a little bit in terms of what Michigan's offense is going to look like or how the offense might change with Alex Orji back there. But I really think the important thing is giving Alex Orji the confidence and saying, like, hey, this is your job now. You don't have to look over your shoulder. You don't have to worry about going in and out of the game. We're going to give you an opportunity to be the starting quarterback with the intention that you're going to remain the starting quarterback. I think it was probably good for Alex Orji's confidence to hear that from Sharon Moore on Monday of game week and go into this week with a clear mind, knowing that the job was his.
I always thought that given all of the change in the program since January, realistically, Michigan would have some hiccups this year. You had to expect that. And so far, through 3 games, this has been a pretty good reality check, especially for the fan base, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. I think a lot of people, myself included, felt like even with everything that Michigan lost, that there was the talent on this team for Michigan to contend for a spot in the college football playoff. And Michigan has not looked like a playoff team through 3 games. Maybe they will round into form and start to look like that type of team as the season goes on. But they're clearly not there yet. I think probably for me, the surprise was, I expected Alex Orji to be the starting quarterback from the beginning. And I thought if Michigan could figure out an offense that was built around what he does well, then the supporting cast on offense and the talent that Michigan has on defense would be enough for this team to be a top 10 type of team. And we haven't seen that yet from Michigan for a lot of reasons. Quarterback position, offensive line, the defense has had some moments where they haven't looked as good as maybe we thought they could be, but it's still very early in the season. And if Michigan wins this game this week, they'll be 3-1, and their only loss will be against the number 1 team in the country. So for all the concern and the conversation about Michigan not looking like the team that we thought they could be, it's still very early, and I think there's still a chance for them to change that narrative if they come out and win this game on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think Michigan fans have to keep that in mind and keep things in perspective, that it's not how you look in September, it's how you look in November, and there's really only one direction this team can go at this point, I think, isn't there?
I think the hope is that this early stretch of the season is a wake-up call, is an opportunity for Michigan to reevaluate some things, make some personnel changes as they're doing this week, and figure out what do we have to do to get our best team on the field. And if they can do that, I think there still is the talent on this team for Michigan to have a good season. And maybe it's not going to be the team that people hoped it could be. Maybe the expectations were a bit too high given everything that Michigan lost and had to replace. We've all gotten used to this Michigan team over the last 3 years. You felt like they'd figure out a way to win every week. We saw Michigan do that so many times. And maybe people will have to get used to the fact that Michigan is a little bit more like the rest of college football this year.
Yeah.
Most teams go into every week with questions and concerns, and you don't really know what's going to happen, and maybe that's going to be the case for Michigan going forward. But I think there still is time for them to figure it out and to end up having a good season.
Well, if we thought any aspect of this team was, a sure thing or something we could hang our hat on before the season, it was the defense. I mean, we had an NFL mind like Wink Martindale running the show, talented, experienced returning starters. But after 3 games, that unit has looked like we thought it would not, and there seems to be confusion, penalties, not disarray all the time. It just hasn't been what we thought it would be yet.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that Michigan and Michigan fans got spoiled the last few years is Michigan's defense was so technically and fundamentally sound.
Yeah.
It just seemed like guys were always in the right place. Michigan really made an emphasis on those 4 pillars that were just really basic fundamental things of effort and angles, block destruction, being in the right place. And Michigan did that so consistently that it's been a while since we've seen a Michigan defense where guys weren't just completely on point all the time. It's not that Michigan has been bad so far this year. They've been very solid on defense, and what they've given up was mostly against an offense that might be the most talented in college football, or one of the top 2, right there with Ohio State. So you definitely have to grade on a curve a little bit for what we saw against Texas, but I think it's certainly true overall. Michigan just has not been as disciplined on defense so far as what we're used to seeing from this Michigan team. And maybe part of that is the transition to a new defensive coordinator who, even though he comes from the same coaching tree and the same system, does some things differently than Jesse Mentor did or than Mike McDonald. So I think this week is going to be really telling to see, going against a really talented offense from USC. Do we see this look like the old Michigan defense that was able to really play together and play discipline and shut down really good offenses? Do we see that from Michigan this week, or do we see more of what we saw against Texas, where a really good offense is able to put this defense in some tough positions?
Well, this Saturday, USC rolls into town. They're just outside the top 10. They are not Texas, but this is still a very talented group, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Miller Moss, I think, as we saw in that win against LSU, one of the most talented passers in the Big Ten. Lots of skill position talent for USC, as always. The offensive line for USC has been a little bit of a question mark. I think that's going to be a really telling matchup this week in terms of, can Michigan get some pressure on Miller Moss and disrupt USC? That first game against LSU, I think, really opened some eyes around the country in terms of what USC could be, but also maybe LSU was a bit overvalued maybe going into the season. So we're going to find out as time goes on just how impressive that win was for USC. But definitely, a lot of things with USC that you got to respect, including the head coach Lincoln Riley, who's one of the best offensive minds in college football. So it's going to be a really big test for Michigan's defense.
Well, when Michigan has the ball, especially in the first few drives, it seems paramount that they have some success. So it's going to be interesting to see how they script those first few drives for Orji, isn't it, Austin?
You definitely want to get Alex Orji settled in, get him in a rhythm. You want to have some plays scripted out for him that are going to get his confidence up. It really does seem like confidence is such a big piece of it for him, especially. I mean, for all quarterbacks, but definitely for Alex Orji making his first start. If he can hit a couple passes and get in rhythm, then I think we'll see him settle in and play really well. But if Michigan gets off to a tough start, has a couple three and outs early in the game, then you could see that also, going downhill pretty fast. I do think the early part of this game is going to be really important for Alex Orji and really important for Michigan to have a good plan for the early drives to get Alex Orji settled in and get his confidence up.
Well, USC's defense the last couple of years has been in no shortage of talent. That's never the case there at USC, but they were just fundamentally horrible at tackling. The last 2 years was just awful. It's early, but it looks like new DC D'Anton Lynn has sharpened things up fast, hasn't he?
Yeah, D'Anton Lynn, one of the, I think, rising stars on the defensive side in college football, did a really good job at UCLA. And then when USC was needing somebody to come in there and fix that defense that has been really Achilles heel for Lincoln Riley everywhere he's been. He's had incredible offensive talent, an offensive scheme, basically every stop as a head coach, but just hasn't been able to get the defense right. And you always wondered, a Lincoln Riley team that even just pretty good on defense, he didn't have to be great, but just, fundamentally sound on defense, how good could they be? And maybe we will find that out this year. And, an interesting wrinkle of this matchup is the fact that D'Anton Lynn comes from that same Baltimore Ravens coaching tree, does a lot of similar things in terms of his philosophy defensively to what Michigan has wanted to do. So this will be a very interesting early test for that defense to find out, is this USC defense for real?
Yeah, and from a Michigan game planning perspective, do you think they are going to, want to let Orji sling it around a bit early, or do you think the overall game plan, especially from the start, is going to be run-centric?
I think Michigan will want to establish the running game, will want to get Kalel Mullings involved early, because we saw last week how good Kalel Mullings can be when he's really in a rhythm. So I think that Michigan will want to establish that, but I also think it will open up a lot of things for Michigan if you can just show the defense that they have to respect Alex Orji's arm, I'm going to be curious just how much USC is going to respect that, how much they feel like they have to be prepared for Alex Orji to throw the ball down the field, or are they just going to stack the box and say, we really don't think you can throw the ball. If Michigan can force USC to at least respect the possibility of Alex Orji throwing the ball down the field, then I think that'll open up a lot of things in terms of what you can do with these running backs and with Alex Orji as well.
Well, whatever the game plan is, I think it has to be crafted with the idea of getting the lead first, because you don't want to play come from behind against these guys, especially with a new quarterback under center. That is just not a game Michigan wants to get involved with, I wouldn't think. Would you, Austin?
Well, that was the problem against Texas. Michigan ended up throwing the ball 33 times against Texas.
Yeah.
And Donovan Edwards had 8 carries. Kalel Mullings had 6 carries against Texas. And that's just not a formula for Michigan to win. Michigan is not going to win games that way. And part of that was they were behind early against Texas, and they felt like they had to throw the ball. But with this Michigan offense, I just think, I don't think there's ever a time for Michigan when running the ball should be off the table. We have seen that in the past with Michigan, where they would run the ball even in situations where traditionally you would say that's a passing situation. But when you can run the ball the way Michigan has in the past, then you can do it at any time. And Michigan has to get back to being that team that can do that. They haven't been that team necessarily so far, in part because the offensive line has to play better. You have to have a really good offensive line to be the kind of team that can go out and run the ball on 3rd and 7 and feel confident that you can get it. But for this team and this offense, I think it's absolutely the case that 3rd and 7, that's not necessarily a situation where you have to throw the ball. If you're down 10 points early, not necessarily a situation where you have to throw the ball. Because I think Michigan, to be successful, has to be able to play on their terms and has to be able to run the ball.
We talked about Wink Martindale just a few minutes ago, but this is going to be an interesting test for his defense. The USC offense, pass heavy, which you'd expect from a Lincoln Riley offense. So Michigan really needs to get after Miller Moss, get some pressure on him early, don't they?
Yeah, I think we still haven't seen the best of what Michigan's defense can do in terms of creating havoc and creating pressure. But I think this is the week, to really let it rip. Texas had a very good offensive line. They had 4 starters coming back, All-America left tackle. I don't think USC's offensive line is up to that level. So I think there ought to be some opportunities for Michigan to get pressure on Miller Moss, starting with the front 4, Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore, TJ Guy. I think this will be a big week for them to show that they can really be disruptive. And then I expect Wink Martindale to have some creative pressures in the playbook, in the game plan this week. We've seen him bring Will Johnson off the edge. We've seen Wink Martindale really, especially on 3rd down, come up with some creative pressures. But then also Michigan's got to get off the field on 3rd down.
Yeah.
Those creative pressures and creative looks, they have to get home. They have to create the kind of disruption that Michigan needs to get the other team off the field, because, especially against Texas and early against Arkansas State, Michigan was just not able to get off the field on 3rd down. They've been giving up a lot of 3rd down conversions on 3rd and long, and that's something that Michigan is going to have to fix this week to have a chance to win.
Well, it seems like through the first 3 weeks we've been saying this is a big game, each week for different reasons, but this week really is big in the sense that if Michigan wins, that's going to be uplifting for the team, for the young quarterback under center. But you lose, then you run the risk of things spiraling out of control, not long term, but this season. So it really is a huge game for Sharon and his team, isn't it, Austin?
I think this really is an inflection point for this Michigan team and this season to figure out what kind of season is this going to be. Because if Michigan finds a way to win this game, like I said earlier, they'll be 3-1 and the only loss against maybe the best team in the country. And they'll have a stretch of games coming up that look like winnable games on paper. So there's a possibility if Michigan wins this game, they could be going into that Oregon game in November with 1 loss and right in the thick of the playoff hunt, which, given the level of, concern or alarm that everybody's had about Michigan so far this season. That would be a pretty remarkable turnaround for Michigan to be able to be in that position. But the path is there for them to do that. But if Michigan loses this game, now they're 2-2. I believe it would be the first time since 2014 that Michigan would have 2 losses in September. And now it becomes tough to kind of, keep the ship afloat, because a team that's used to competing for Big Ten championships and playoff berths, and it would be a really tough thing for Sharon Moore to keep the positive momentum going if Michigan is all of a sudden 2-2 and looking at the rest of the season and wondering what's out there for us now. So I do think this is a really pivotal point in the season. Michigan can go one of 2 ways, and I think that what happens Saturday will really tell us a lot in terms of where this season is going.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Austin. We don't know what's going to happen Saturday, for better or for worse, but have the first 3 weeks changed your idea after watching this team of your expectations for what you thought this team could be?
I have revised my thoughts on this Michigan team in some ways after the first 3 weeks. I was one of those people going into the season who said, I really think this is a team that can win 10 games. A team that can make the college football playoff. They just felt like even with all the questions on offense and all the players that Michigan lost and coaches from last year, I felt like the core of this team was still really good. And I still feel that way, in some sense. I still think this defense could be one of the best in college football. And I still think it's possible that we'll see Michigan figure out some things with Alex Orji at quarterback that will allow them to score enough points to beat most of the teams on their schedule. I still think all that's possible. I don't think it's as likely anymore just because we haven't seen it yet. I think Michigan really would have to make some dramatic in-season improvement to be that kind of team that can win 10 games. And teams do get better over the course of the season. Every single year we have teams that don't play great in September and we write them off. And then by the end of the season, they're playing really good. And Michigan could be that team this year. Absolutely. I still think there's the talent on this team to be able to do that, but it would take some really dramatic in-season improvement for Michigan to be able to get to that point.
Absolutely. And we're going to find out, of course, a lot more on Saturday against a very good USC team. Here with us today with his take on what we've seen so far this season for Michigan has been beat writer Austin Meek from The Athletic. Always a pleasure to get your take on things and have you as a guest, Austin, and we thank you for your time.
Always enjoy it, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
On Quick Hits today, no updates on the injury to Colston Loveland or any others for that matter. We'll probably have to wait until Saturday to see if Colston is a go. Here are a few game day notes of interest for USC. The Trojans have the lead in this series with 6 wins against 4 losses. The first meeting with Michigan was in the 1948 Rose Bowl, a 49-0 Michigan win. The last meeting was in the 2007 Rose Bowl, a 32-18 USC win. Head coach Lincoln Riley is in his 3rd year at SC. His record is 21-8. In 8 years as a head coach, his overall record is 76-18. Last year, the Trojans finished 8-5 overall, 5-4 in the Pac-12. They finished the season unranked. Their last bowl appearance was in the 2023 Holiday Bowl against Louisville, a 42-28 win. The weatherman says it will be another summer-like day for football. Partly sunny with temps in the mid-80s. There is a slight chance of rain, and winds will be light. I have no idea what's going to happen on Saturday. I do know this is an early test for Sharon Moore and his staff. After 3 weeks, you would like to be settled at quarterback and even the offensive line, but we're not. So it is what it is. A big-time opponent in USC that will require a much improved effort from us in every phase of the game. It will be interesting, to say the least. Next week, we stay home for a visit from Minnesota. On Tuesday's Visitors Edition, we'll hear from Gopher radio play-by-play voice Mike Grimm. Then on Thursday's Michigan Game Day, our guest will be Clayton Safey from the Wolverine Magazine and the Wolverine on 3. So make sure you come back for that. That does it for now. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Think victory, beat USC. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!